This woman is extraordinarily woke, as everyone is in Hollywood, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged. Well, like me, who watched Disney princess movies when the world was okay and be swept off of your feet and live happily ever after. No, you should want to be the prince. You should want to go out and fight the bad guys with a sword. And I'm like, I don't really want to do that.
What happens when a fairy tale meant to charm the world becomes a battleground instead? Disney's live-action Snow White was supposed to be a magical return to a timeless classic, but it stumbled before it even hit theaters. The reason? A star whose bold words lit a fire nobody saw coming.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
The buzz around Disney's new Snow White started strong. A live-action take on the 1937 gem promised stunning visuals and a fresh spin for today's audiences. Fans imagined sharing the magic with their kids, while new viewers were ready to fall for a princess who'd inspired generations. But whispers of trouble surfaced early. The lead actress, young and outspoken, wasn't quite embracing the story everyone knew. Her comments, sharp and unfiltered, hinted at a vision that didn't match the fairy tale's heart. And that was just the beginning.
And the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Snow White is running for president.
I'm launching my campaign.
Enter Rachel Zegler, cast as Snow White herself. At first, her role seemed like a dream fit. She'd already shown in West Side Story, earning praise for her talent and charisma. But Zegler had big ideas for this princess. She didn't want a damsel dreaming of true love. Instead, she pitched a Snow White who craved power and leadership, someone who'd rather run the kingdom than wait for a prince. In interviews, she called her version fearless and fair, inspired by a father's advice to be brave. It sounded empowering, but it wasn't landing the way she hoped.
Yeah, we had more dwarfs than we did viewers in most of these theaters. And as you know, there were no dwarfs other than some CGI weird generated version of them. It's the old, it truly is go woke, go broke.
The problem? Zegler didn't just pitch a new Snow White. She tore into the old one. The 1937 film, she said, was stuck in a time warp. The prince? A relic. The romance? Outdated nonsense. She laughed off the idea of being swept off her feet, insisting her Snow White would wield ambition, not charm. For fans who grew up loving the gentle heroine, this felt like a slap. Social media lit up with frustration. People didn't want their childhood favorite called archaic. They wanted warmth, not a lecture, and Zegler's tone, often blunt, wasn't helping. But that wasn't the whole story.
Don't alienate half of the country when you're putting out a product meant to appeal to all. It's the Michael Jordan Republicans buy sneakers too. One of the 18 hours I am in this Snow White dress, I expect to get paid. If it's 18 hours, I want 18 hours of pay. I'm sure she got underpaid as a Disney lead actress.
The backlash grew fast, and it wasn't just fans. Commentators like Candace Owens jumped in, calling Zegler's approach arrogant. Owens argued you don't take a beloved role just to mock its roots. If you sign up to play Snow White, she said, you honor the magic that made her iconic. Instead, Zegler seemed to roll her eyes at the fairy tale's core: love, grace, optimism. Forums buzzed with fans feeling betrayed, while others tried to defend her, saying she was just modernizing a dusty story. But the more she spoke, the deeper the divide. And what happened next would shock everyone.
People have real problems and no one gives a shit if she got paid for 17 instead of 18 on her multi-million-dollar salary, which is not calculated by the hour. So she just encapsulates everything that most of us cannot stand about modern day feminism and the left in general. This weird feminist thing where her heroine cannot be in love or be saved by a man, the prince, that she's more focused on becoming the leader she was meant to be, as if women in modern day America must make that choice.
Zegler didn't stop at rethinking Snow White. She waded into choppier waters, tossing out comments that hit nerves beyond the script. She hinted at political divides, suggesting some fans clung to outdated values. Then came the dwarf controversy. Disney's choice to swap the classic 7 for CGI creations sparked rumors Zegler had pushed for sensitivity changes. She didn't deny it, instead doubling down on updating the tale. To many, it felt like she was rewriting history to fit her own lens, not the stories. Even neutral viewers started to wonder, did she even like this project? But there was more trouble brewing.
You cannot both be a leader as a female and fall in love and be rescued by a prince. Like, that's incongruous bullshit. That's only the left's version of what it means to be a strong woman or female empowerment. So, I mean, this woman has clicked every box. And just for cherry on top at the end, she gave an interview last week talking about how they were basically a bunch of white supremacists on the set of West Side Story.
Behind the scenes, Snow White was unraveling. Delays piled up, with whispers of reshoots to fix a sinking ship. The budget ballooned, and insiders hinted at panic in the studio. A film meant to unite families was losing its glow before it even premiered. Zegler's interviews kept making headlines, but not for hype. Every quip about the old Snow White or its weird prince fueled more doubts. Parents who'd planned to bring their kids started hesitating. Would this be the fairy tale they remembered? The signs weren't good, and the numbers would prove it.
Where Steven Spielberg and co. were demanding that she prove how Latina she really is, since her name doesn't sound Latina, and she was angrily saying, did I have to bring in my little abuelita for you to believe that I was Latina? That's her thanks to Steven Spielberg, who discovered her and made her. So she's an ingrate, she's annoying, and I think she's probably two and done.
When Snow White finally hit theaters, the seats stayed empty. Opening weekend was a shadow of what Disney expected. Compare that to Minecraft, a video game flick that raked in more in one weekend than Snow White did globally after 3. Critics noted a hollow vibe. Gorgeous visuals couldn't mask a story that felt forced. Zegler's performance, they said, lacked the warmth fans craved. The absence of the dwarfs, replaced by odd CGI, didn't help. The fairy tale's charm was gone, and many pointed fingers at the star who'd spent months calling it flawed. But was she the only one to blame?
And if she hadn't have opened her mouth, I think that this movie might have done well. They might have just been able to ride on the hopium of the movie and some well-cut trailers, and people would have paid to go see it, and then it would have fallen off when people knew it was garbage. Rachel Zegler made it so hateable that you really sabotaged and took hundreds of millions of dollars from the studio. I don't know how anyone would ever want to go into business with her ever again.
The fallout didn't stay in theaters. Whispers on X and industry circles suggested Zegler's career might take a hit. Studios, burned by the Snow White mess, were reportedly wary. Her past flared up too. Comments about West Side Story sets and pay disputes resurfaced, painting her as tough to work with. Some called her ungrateful, arguing she'd squandered a golden role. Others saw a young star caught in a storm, trying to speak her truth. Either way, the damage was done. Casting directors were taking notes, and not the good kind. But this wasn't just about one actress.
It just takes a beloved movie and makes it much more boring and much less realistic. The movie is really, really bad. But the primary suffering is being sent in by my company to watch a children's movie as a single man, like 2 p.m. on a Thursday. That was the first part that was a little bit weird, but I was basically the only person in the theater.
The Snow White flop sparked a bigger question. How do you update a classic without breaking its spell? Some reimaginings, like Cinderella or Beauty and the Beast, tweaked the story but kept the heart. Zegler's approach, critics said, threw out the heart entirely. Candace Owens doubled down, insisting respect for the original isn't optional, it's the foundation. Fans didn't want a princess running for president. They wanted the dreamy optimism they'd grown up with. The clash showed how tricky it is to balance new ideas with nostalgia, and it left everyone wondering what could have been.
Very few people wanted to see this. Even the little kids who like Disney movies, even they don't seem to be turning up in droves for the movie because the movie is really, really bad. And so I've got some bona fides here on being fair. The movie was absolutely terrible. In every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse.
So, where does this leave us? Rachel Zegler's Snow White was meant to be a triumph, but it became a warning. Her sharp words turned a fairy tale into a fight, pushing away the very fans Disney needed. The empty theaters told a story of lost trust, not just in her but in a studio that let the noise drown out the magic. Yet the question lingers, can you modernize a legend without losing its soul? That's the puzzle Hollywood's still solving, and it's one we'll all be watching,